All right. Hello, Mike. How are you doing
Hello,
today?
Jack. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, same to you.
Think you and I both are dressed for the occasion, which is great. Although, wow, you wait, are you wearing a tie? Wait, what's
Yeah,
going
I,
on?
I'm yeah, I'm wearing a wool tie because kind of I feel like I need something warm around my neck in that in that
Wow, okay.
on that
Yeah, I
cold
mean, it
days.
is chilly a little bit, but it looks good. No, I mean, I was thinking you were trying to impress me, but it's okay. You don't have to dress. I obviously don't ever dress up, so whatever.
Or you maybe you want to hire me and this is gonna be our interview.
That's true. I mean, you do put across as everyone knows, whoever watches this, which is thank you for anyone watching, is you are the expert and the professional one, and I am the I don't know what I am. Um, but I do have a topic, and I do think you'd enjoy this because the topic is going to be play.
Hmm.
And the reason this comes to mind is because the next part of this book that I wrote was that I think that AI, remember, that's what we talk about AI for some reason. I don't know, how's AI
Yeah,
going for you? Is AI all
yeah,
right?
it's pretty big, for me. Yeah, it's pretty
It's
much
okay. Okay, so
the only thing
it's
that I do.
okay, good. It's still around. Seems fine.
Hmm.
Everyone's, got whatever opinion, but seemingly did Nvidia still do well? I guess it must have, but I don't know.
Yeah, they are kind of sending like a few hundred billion to OpenAI, and then
I
OpenAI send back, 100 billion to them,
I know
and so
Microsoft finally got dinged though, right? I was happy because I'm always happy when Microsoft doesn't do well for some reason.
yeah,
Um,
and yeah, so everybody seems to be happy as long as they
okay.
can send a lot of money and receive a lot of money. Yeah, that's great.
Money is always going to make people happy for some
Mm.
reason. I don't know why.
Like in
But
that
anyway,
in that musical, right? Money makes the world go around, right?
I think it was meant sarcastically, but we'll have to go
Yeah.
check. Or ironically, let's put it that way. But
Mhm.
yes, but true. So anyway, the AI is still around, and I haven't seen any big changes. Although I find myself, and I don't know if you ever do this, but I use so many different programs. I mean, they're models, I guess, but they also have other things going on in them, right? So I was just using Notebook LM for something, and then I'm obviously using Claude for something, and then I use OpenAI for something, and then I use Perplexity for something else. And then once in a while, there's one called Think Buddy, which I guess is Google. Anyway, I think it's humorous. Maybe it's how I organize my brain because I always seem to have too many things going on rather than using one model to do everything. Maybe it's an organizational thing, but I never notice any particular difference. I guess that's except Perplexity. Um, I always figure like Perplexity is the new web search, but that is not the topic. We said the topic is playing. Maybe
Mhm.
that's my own way of playing. It's like, hey, once in a while, instead of playing Minesweeper, I'm going to move over to chess, online chess, and then I'm going to do Wordle, or you know what I mean. Like there are different ways we engage with things, but the topic of play is the next part of the book because I guess I think of AI as being a new playmate, but I don't know how to kind of unpack this. So I know you're, and speaking of playmates, I don't know if you've seen the latest robot that you can get for 500 bucks a month, apparently, that comes in and sort of tries to do things in your house.
Yeah. I was
But
wondering if we're gonna kind of go in that
we
direction
could do it.
anyway.
I mean, it's funny because I kept thinking, one of the aspects of these robots is this sort of, and I thought they did a good job of making it sort of like a plush toy. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, rather than the shiny Robert Zelazny robots, that always have chrome, and they're kind of like
Mm.
artificial looking. This one just looks kind of like a weird Teletubby. And I suppose once they learn to talk, you could ask them to dance around or do something to make you feel less lonely. I don't know. Anyway, But play, but
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Playmates. There, you have a kid, you're like, here's your playmate. I don't want to deal with you. I got other things to do. you know, here, help it clean up its room. Or I don't know. I mean, that's maybe the different kind of my play is more obviously mental play because I like thinking about stuff and playing around with ideas. I don't know. Maybe I think I might be an outlier. What do you think? Do people only use AI for work? I guess that's my question to you because you're the expert.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a little bit of a question of a kind of profession and demographics. Uh, Full disclosure, when I was in college, I didn't have any problem playing a game, before an exam or something. Nowadays, I feel guilty if, let's say, if I played chess, or something with a computer and not even having a deadline on the horizon, I wouldn't feel like this is the right thing to do. All right. So yeah, I think times have changed.
Hmm.
And I'm very interested in games. I love to look at, the solutions and plays, gameplays, as kind of the design kind of discipline. But I really don't play anymore. Don't feel like this is kind of something that I want to do. Um, so yeah, yeah, not sure.
So
Maybe
Jack
not.
is all work and no play. Are you just trying to tell me you're just like the thing in The Shining?
No, I mean, no, I have so many hobbies that I don't even know where to start. I mean,
Well, hobbies are play, right? I mean,
I
yeah, I mean, you don't have to
yeah.
play a game, or maybe that's a really good thing. Do you see a hobby as different from playing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a
Oh,
little bit of a musician, right? So I
yeah,
play keyboards, right? So I need to allocate some time to doing that, not because I have to, because I want to, right? So it's probably supposed to play half an hour on an hour every day, if you want to be a if you want to play something substantial, right, like a concerto or something, right? So I mean, that's kind of like you need the exercise, right? Your fingers needs to exercise, kind of like a sports exercise, but also your brain needs to exercise, yeah. So that kind of thing. Right. So then you probably need to do a little bit of sports, maybe, do some biking or whatever, because, if you are sitting the whole day in front of the computer, then, sitting is the new smoking, right? So you need to kind of take care of the heart and, and the circulation, right? And that kind of thing.
it's
Right.
true.
So yeah, so once you start adding up those little things, maybe a little hobby here, a little hobby there, then a video game or a computer game, even as I mean, distinguished, like maybe chess, right, is probably not in the top 10, right?
Hmm.
And that's a little bit of a problem.
Well, I think what you brought up is super relevant to this. Our side topic is AI, right? And here's this new capability. And as I said, I think using it for play. Well, let's unpack something because you said
Mm,
the perfect example, and
mm,
this might be just nomenclature, right? Or I think it is a central point of when I write about this. I'm always puzzled as why we call certain things play. Like you play a sport and you play music, right?
mm,
These are like the two ways you can play, right? But I find that mislabeling in some respect because certainly I have no musical ability or talent, right? And to me, um, I see that as practice or
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
not always fun. In fact, it often is very tedious, right? Like that's
Mm,
why I never do it because I hate every time I pick up a guitar, it's like, oh my God, this is really tedious to learn how to make your fingers do things, right? Like, yeah, my fingers are terrible at stuff like that, right? Or if you're playing sports, like obviously not for a living, but those are rule based. And so one of
yeah.
the things my wife and I were speaking of, and you can give your own example, is that one thing I think we don't let our children do when they are young is to make up games, right? Like that's kind of a magical power of kids, right? Is you don't need a formal game like, hey, I'm taking my kids to soccer practice, because in a
Mm,
sense, I mean, soccer is a great example. It's kicking a ball, right? Like, you don't need rules or referees or goals or whatever. You can just kick a ball around, right? And it's fun and it's play, right? It kind of satisfies all needs, really. Or you could toss a ball around, right? Similar, but or you can make up your own game, such as Australian football. As I went to Australia, they totally made this up out of because they just had some stuff lying around. But it's weird that it becomes like a formal set of rules, and you know what I mean? Like you as a child are taught the rules. You see where I'm going? Is like I think rule making up rule games like Calvin Ball. Remember Calvin and Hobbes? It's like making them up is an essential developmental skill. And sometimes I think that when we actually deprive kids of that. Like we deprive them walking home from school to have time to kick a can. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, yeah, if you have to walk home, it's really boring, but hey, you kick a can, you've made up a game, you have two people and you're like racing for the can. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly. Yeah.
life is really fun if you get to do that. And I think I'm experiencing that now with some of my students, which I don't think you ever got to kick a can. Like you're waiting for the rules to be set before you do anything. And I'm like, who told you this? There aren't any rules, right? Or well, that maybe that's too much for you to unpack. What do you think? Am I onto something?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that if we kind of move the discussion towards the AI on the main, which might be kind of an equivalent of kicking the can, while kind of like trying to invent a
Yeah,
game, right?
totally.
I think we are very close to maybe being there, where people with a lot of creativity now will be able to invent new games, right? So it's not just a chess or first-person shooter style of a game, right? Or turn-based game, right? So again, the definition and of a game or a computer game or whatever is that there should be some sort of an objective, right? And there's some sort of a score, right? And then in the video game domain, game is a system that is supposed to lose the game after putting up a good fight, right? So that's kind of like a design principle, right? So what we might be kind of getting close to is something that I've read in a obscure sci-fi magazine, like several decades ago. There was a short story called The Hitman. So I'm probably going to sell the story because it's very unlikely that anybody will
Spoiler
find
alert.
it.
It's fine. Yeah,
Spoiler,
it's fine.
total spoiler alert. So there's a interstellar mission. The first officer wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling something is off, right? And he walks towards the bridge of the spaceship, the starship, right? And he walks in there, and he stops at the door, bulkhead, whatever, and he sees that the captain is on the bridge in the chair, and he is shot, right? He shot dead, right? With something that looks like a large caliber weapon, right? And begins to investigate, right? And turns out after a while, right, that the captain was playing a game. The game was called The Hitman. And the game was a very high level AI game, so high level that it was illegal. And basically, was a game where you decide to play the game against the AI, and the AI is going to try to kill you. And the AI is going to maybe hack into some banking account and get a lot of funding to hire a hitman, right? Maybe it will access some databases
Okay.
and will find, maybe people who have a grudge against you, and will kind of be a candidate to carry out the contract, And so the AI is basically going to kind of set up a contract, and then you kind of your play is to avoid being shot, right? So kind of you're playing Jason Bourne basically, right? So you are up against the unknown danger, but it's there, right? And
Hmm.
And you can either try to kind of beat the game, survive, right? Basically yourself, or you can buy another game that is going to protect you, right? And you are kind of more like a spectator. You're not out of danger, but another game will protect you, kind of the same way, right?
Huh.
So yeah, so I think we are close to being in that area where the AI will have these kind of capabilities of building elaborate scenarios in the virtual and in the physical world. And maybe, it's gonna kind of be kind of semi-illegal, but that would be something that would be the next step, I think, beyond for
Yeah,
first-person
I
shooters.
mean, well, not to unpack this. I think it's a fairly silly product, but you know how things are, right? People there's always people wanting to make money, right? So
Yeah.
there's definitely a technological marvel to it all that you can have this sort of autonomous humany thing that,
Yeah.
that's cool. And let's just pretend, even in our talk, like 20 years from now, right? Like,
Mm.
let's just not even think about the president or present, but 20 years, or how, hold on, 10. This is what's interesting is, to me, it's like, no, it'll just fade away, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, this is just, there's this archetype, this prototype, and because nobody wants to be an early adopter, right? This was the thing with me. Well, maybe with you as well. Like, so computers, to me, computers and games are synonymous.
Mm.
And also, I think you have an interesting perspective on games because I just said play. Like, you don't have to play a game, right? You can just play. You can go run around and jump and do somersaults. You see what I mean? There doesn't need to be any competition with playing. And I spend most of my time with AI just playing because just we're playing with words, or we're playing with ideas, or we're just playing around because there is no cost of failure, right? This to me is the key of play, right? If you will be punished for failure, it's not a game, right? And it's not play. And that's the feeling that I think is bothering me, which I'm happy about AI, right? I'm happy AI because it doesn't care, right? Like, that's the thing. It has no stake in any, it doesn't, not stake in the game, but you know what I mean? Like, it has no ego to bruise. I can't bore it, right? Like I can with you. You know what I mean? Like, I can't get yelled at for dumb opinions, which I have so many of. And I think there's something really refreshing because I try to be that as a teacher. I'm pretty open-minded and I'm like, okay, yeah, you screwed up. In fact, I'm trying to tell you, this is the place to screw up. Now, I think you're going to come back and say, no, school is the place where you're playing the game to win. And I'm like, I think that's the mistake, is that no, school is slightly fake. And I think that's why it fails, or at least is perceived as failing. Did you know that only like 40% of some 10th graders have reading capability anymore? Things like that,
Yeah,
like,
it's hard to believe. Yeah, I'm hearing those statistics and it's hard to
yeah,
believe. And I don't know.
I
Maybe
I
that's
would
true.
believe it, right? Because it's no fun. The reason why we used to read is because it was fun. And now you can just watch TV. We could do that too, but TV used to be boring, right? I mean, it's like now it's fine. Things evolve. You don't need to read, right? Reading just used to be cheap. Printing press, whatever. Nowadays, videos are cheap, right? In fact, I don't think they cost anything at all. Distribution networks are insanely cheap. In fact, they're all free. Crazy, right? Like, that used to, printing magazines cost money, man. Like, they didn't do it
Mm.
for fun. But now you can, right? You can do all of this for fun. So I'm just sort of, I don't mind that one method changes to another, right? That's just being, uh, what's that word? The past was better than the present. I don't believe that, right? Because we're both computer people. Because
Mm.
computers, in fact, changed everything, right? Like, they took all of this stuff, and because of people like, I was just looking into Will Crowther, one of my heroes, who did Colossal Cave back in the day, which was when I was 10 years old. That's what I played on a mainframe computer. I played Colossal Cave, and I'm like, life changing,
Mm.
right? Like,
So cool. Yeah.
it was the coolest thing I'd ever had, you know, and that was what do they call it? Unusual, right? Right place at the right time. Give myself a pat on the back because it took another 5 years for that to kind of become something that you could buy into. And even that was, you remember how expensive computers used to be? Don't even get me started, right? Like they
Oh yeah,
were
yeah.
really expensive. So you had to be rich pretty much. And I guess I was. Yeah, thanks, Dad. You know, that he was into it. So that, speaking of hobbies, that was his hobby, was buying all this ridiculous computer equipment, right? You know, and trying to mess with it.
Mm.
Anyway, that was a long ramble. I guess what I'm getting at is, do you see my conundrum over playing versus games, and how turning things into games, like you said, that have scores and have rules, isn't necessarily, unless it's just used as a failure mitigator, right? Like fine, you can go play dodgeball all day long. You don't really win. You know what I mean? You're just there to dodge the ball or whatever. You're there to play. And the playing itself, like when you're playing your keyboard because you've done it for so many years, you actually are probably now playing, right? Because you've done all the hard work of making your fingers do things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that first part's work as far as I can, you know, I mean, that's hard work to make your fingers do things, right? And you need constant teaching or reinforcement or somebody making you do it, or you see what I mean? It's not like for play. Do I make any sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, there's again, you know, I mean, you now are kind of putting so many kind of aspects to it, right? So, with kind of like activities like, playing tennis or playing piano or whatever, there's the aspect of maybe installing a habit
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that might
Or
be
building habits.
a
Yeah.
harder thing, but maybe not necessarily work, or maybe I don't know. I mean, uh,
I
I'm
think it's
kind of
harder than you think, you know, like it's hard. It's like learning a
I'm
new language at our age. Are you kidding me? It's hard.
yeah,
But at a young
exactly, yeah.
age, it's fun.
And neuroplasticity obviously is an issue here that is kind of maybe the number one thing,
That's a
right?
good point.
I'm probably also not the right person to kind of like talk about this because I am a product of an educational system where there was zero play, right? It's all pressure based, right? It was
Okay.
all,
I
you
want to hear
know,
about that though. Like,
yes. So it was, like from, maybe not in the first grade, but as far as I remember, there was always, like, you know, classes and homework and grading and the pressure associated with achieving high grade, right? Pressures from the teachers because you get yelled at if you don't have the homework. If your handwriting was not perfect, you get yelled at. You get a report, right? If let's say the essay was supposed to be 2 pages, but you only wrote 1 page. That would be like in red written a message from the teacher to your parents that, hey, you were supposed to do 2 pages and you did only one, and your performance is not satisfactory. And by the way, you are 7 year old, right? So
mhm.
from the and then my first day in college was basically the professor said that not everybody has to be an engineer, and my role here is to
Well, yeah.
filter out those so. And that was a math class, right? And pretty much every other professor said exactly the same thing, like, hey, we are not here to help you develop or whatever. They were just saying, hey, not everybody has to complete this class, right? Not everybody
Hmm.
has to get a degree in engineering, so yeah, again, enormous pressure, enormous pressure.
I mean,
Uh,
do you think that's unusual? Because education systems, as far as I know, like we inherited ours from Germany. I don't know.
yeah, that
Yours
was
is.
exactly right. The
Oh,
Prussian
okay.
German, system, right? So I don't know, but maybe the direction nowadays is to kind of be a little bit I don't know, more play oriented, right? Like kind of like it's not a rigid, like read the book, do a home assignment, you get a grade, repeat, right?
Hmm.
Right. So so yeah, so I guess I guess there is also the problem of, like, how do we name things? Like is let's say I'm playing Legos, right? Is that a game or a play, right? You might want to say, hey, it doesn't have to be there. Maybe there is no objective, but maybe there is an implicit objective always, right? Like, hey, I feel good because I built something that is kind of nice, right? Or I built this tower. It doesn't have any
Intrinsic
say.
versus extrinsic is the word,
Exactly, right.
right?
So maybe a game and a play are very closely correlated, because that the intrinsically there's always a little bit of a score, right? Oh, I am good at Legos because I built a bridge, right? That was not my objective. It just came out, and I feel good about it. That's my reward form of a score. Maybe there is not a negative, uh, kind of form of a reward. There was no punishment because, hey, that's just Legos, right? Or it's just a game, or it's just kind of like playing piano, and maybe I pushed the wrong key and my chord was off. But that's fine, right? So I don't know.
But you just cracked the code. Actually,
Mm.
that's the perfect thing I think I'm trying to discuss when it comes to play, right? Intrinsic rewards versus extrinsic rewards.
Mhm.
Extra is a game, right? It has
Mhm.
rules
Mhm.
in it and you get score. Intrinsic, no, you just feel good. Right? Like, but they're
Mhm.
true because we do lots of things with intrinsic rewards, I think, right? Like eating bad food, I don't know.
Mhm.
We do things that are just for pleasure, right? And that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. You might have also hit my one weak spot with Legos because I did grow up with lots of Legos. Love, Legos were
Mhm.
fun and it was all intrinsic. You made something you didn't take it and show it to people. Nobody cared. In fact, that was the other thing. Parents didn't care back then. Like you weren't doing things for them to be approving of you. So that's a whole different topic. But whatever. You just did it because had time to kill and it's better than nothing. But when my kids were young, Legos became models. Remember models? Where you'd
Mhm.
make a model, and the model can only be one thing, and your goal was to sniff as much glue as possible, or
Mhm.
whatever, while making this thing. And I remember making the 2001 craft, from the
Mhm.
moon
Mhm.
base, and it had the little people in it. Anyway, and those things were fun, but they only became one thing, right? And
Mhm.
your job was to assemble. And it sounds to me like your education, or maybe our education system, is assembler, right? It's factory, right? You
Mhm.
don't get any choice because you don't have that ability to have any intrinsic reward. And so
Mhm.
perhaps that's my debate, right? Like, is AI, and I think it will enable lots of intrinsic reward if you use it that way, or you use it for extrinsic value, such as doing your homework, which it can do that too, but that's only because you're giving it to me, right? Like, and I'm like, well, I don't want the thing that AI produced because I told you that last time, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can tell this is AI produced. It doesn't do anything for me. What it just tells me is that you didn't engage in this intrinsically. Like you didn't get engaged in the problem, which is my fault as a teacher, but I'm like, that could be your choice. Hey, I don't know how to make problems fun, right? I don't know how to play.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's the question, right? Like, Wolfram, for example, the Wolfram Corporation, right? They are
Hmm.
building this mathematical engine, and
Hmm.
I think they are kind of going in the direction that AI could be that layer on top of the, you know, equation solver, or whatever it you want to do with it, like in calculus or in algebra, and so many other domains. So on top of that, they are putting AI, and then the AI can talk to you as using Yoda English, right? Or
Right,
it could
right.
talk to you as a King George, the second, right? Or it could be what. So they have like hundreds of characters, and you can choose a character, and now you can have a conversation with Yoda from Star Wars about, oh,
Come on,
I want to, I
Frankenstein, Dracula. You're
exactly.
not on day. Anyway, keep
Exactly, yeah,
going.
and solve a differential
So
equation,
you're saying is to make
that
it fun is the point, like to make it
yeah,
playful.
playful and attractive and maybe
Sure.
intriguing, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps this is some people, very smart people from Wolfram realizing that they want to democratize a little bit the domain, right, and
Yeah.
making it more
Sure.
attractive. But then on the other hand, uh, the model of play, even very broadly speaking, may not be the most efficient way of doing things, right? Like maybe you are spending too much time on the activity that is play, but maybe you are not learning the underlying theory of a domain that you are addressing, in an optimal way, right? So it seems that our educational system was all about kind of like business, right? Like it was all business, right?
Right.
There was no external activities. It was just read, memorize as much as possible, do as many exercises as possible. You're gonna get graded and rewarded if you did well, and very harshly punished if you didn't do well, right? So perhaps in terms of the neural kind of pathways development and kind of like memorization as a form of learning, which
Mm.
as kind of awful as it sounds, I think there is something to it, right? The kind of like
Well,
the you
not
know
memorization, but familiarization. Because I was think reading. Remember when reading you didn't know a word, and back then, forget it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you didn't run to the dictionary every time, right? You just kind
yeah,
of gleaned it after a while. You know what I mean? Like
exactly, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, you're not
yeah,
empirical in all of the ways you do things, but familiarization helps, right? Like if you've
yeah,
never done
yeah.
it before. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So all I'm trying to say is that gaming, as fun as kind of like maybe interesting, as it sounds, may not be the optimal kind of. There's also a little bit of a gender kind of issue, right? Like boys, for example, would be a lot more inclined to participate or play a game, whereas girls, for example, will on average kind of like center or maybe a different type of an activity, right? So there's that, right? So I don't know. I think the AI is gonna be, since AI already has read all the internet, probably it will also
Well,
have
and
all the
remember, it's just a
theoretical,
bunch of
yeah,
floats, Jack. It
yeah,
doesn't know anything, right?
yeah.
It is just yeah. Okay.
Well, I
Well,
mean, we always kind of get to that thing. Like AI doesn't know anything, doesn't
right.
feel anything, doesn't have a stake in the game, so to speak,
Generative
right?
AI. Old
Right.
AI
Yeah.
did know things, and that's
Yeah.
why it was interesting.
And I always say that, I mean, yes, you are right, but but you can program a system that will actually exhibit synthetic care, right? Exhibit
Yeah.
synthetic state, right? It's kind of similar, like a human brain. Like you can open, somebody's, kind of skull, right, and look at the individual neurons.
Right.
Those
Frankenstein.
individual
He's got a
neurons,
big scar
yeah,
right here, the
yeah,
bolts.
those individual neurons don't care, right? But as a
Right. Yeah.
system, right, the whole brain as a
Yeah.
system, with the memory that we have and everything else, where
Sure.
then that's a different story. And we can say the same thing about AI, right? Like AI can be made so that it's a perfect companion, perfect, caring, well, maybe not perfect, right? But great, caring, participant, that will have a stake in our development, stake in our, kind of, personal, I guess, aspects of our feelings, and things like that. So yeah, I would say that, so gaming, yes, right. The question will be where and how, right?
Well, I mean, I think that's where I'm going is play. If the optimistic version is you have a teacher that is completely unplussed by you failing constantly, but is
Mm.
motivating enough as today, I mean, this must just be me, but maybe it's everybody's. Boy, it really loves to tell me how smart I am, right? Like this is the thing, right? And I even wrote a piece about it like a year ago, and we talked about that. This whole idea of like, is that bad? And I'm like, well, it never bothers me too much, right? Like it gives me a little bit of impetus to keep engaging with it, which is its goal, right? But that's fine. I mean, I would probably do it anyway. If it said, like I can say, oh, that's a terrible idea, right? That's what I say to my wife every day, right? So it's like, but that's demotivating, and it's a bad
Mm.
habit. But like you just said, we were all taught it in school. We're taught like I remember doing geometry proofs, right? Like you get it wrong, you're wrong. You know what I mean? There isn't
Mm.
any like fun, feel good thing. It's just that you made a mistake, but I'm very into embracing mistakes. I'm like, I don't think you can learn without screwing up constantly. You know that from playing your keyboard, right? Like, you know that you've made a mistake, right? That you don't need anyone sitting there and saying you're out of tune. My daughter was just playing the other day and they had to stop and like, I can't play, I'm out of tune. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know that? I can't tell that you're out of tune. You know what I mean? But we're always being told by musicians, have you noticed that they're out of tune? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just music, man. Have a good time, have some fun. But that's what I pick up on. You see what I mean? And I think people pick up on that extrinsic motivation
Mm.
really easily. But the intrinsic motivation has to come from intrinsic reward, which we don't often practice. Hey, I was just screwing around for hours talking about, I can tell you what I was talking about, and maybe it's fun. We can end with it. But, I was talking about this thing just because I was curious about it, right? Like, I don't have any extrinsic extrin, reward other than I want to use this to build this class. Or like I want to use this concept of play to build out kind of we talk about the negative things AI can do, right? Because it doesn't care. It can be used to cheat. It can be used to make us feel like we don't need to learn times tables anymore. It makes us certainly think we don't have to read long passages anymore of text, because I'm still trying to read Frankenstein, by the way, on brand, right?
Mm.
It
Mm.
is not an easy book to read. It's just written with a different sensibility that you really have to spend a lot of time focusing on. And I'm finding that hard, even though it was easier for me when I was young. You
Mm.
know, the book, the thing you just quoted, right? Like the current Jack probably wouldn't spend the time to read that story.
Yeah, yeah, it's very possible. Yeah, the thing that I kind of often consider is that is it really possible that we don't have any kind of really motivations, whether it's external or internal, right? Implicit, explicit. Uh, like for example, if I'm playing right piano, maybe at the back of my head, maybe kind of really deep, right? Maybe not consciously. I maybe I'm trying to kind of become like one of my, idols, right? Like Keith Emerson, for example, that passed away a few years ago.
Oh,
You know,
really? He's
he,
not? Oh,
yeah, he was
yeah,
he was such a genius player. Maybe I want to
sure.
be a little bit like him,
Although you
right? So
need
my
7 synths so that you can play them all at once, right?
Yeah,
That was.
so the modular Moog is probably out of question, right? So whether it's
I
external
just
or
remember they always
internal,
have a lot of keyboards, and he would always play, and I'm like, God, that's
yeah,
amazing
yeah,
that your
but
fingers do that. Anyway, yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? So maybe I'm not playing, because I want to kind of like, play a particular piece of
Sure,
music, but maybe
nobody's
I
going to
want
come
to
in and
be,
say, "Bravo,
yeah,
what a great," you
exactly.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're
but
not doing
maybe
it
I
for
want
that.
to be a little bit like him, right? Maybe I want to kind of go, and have, something that I can, basically, I actually have his work, on my, Keith Emerson,
Oh, okay,
plays,
sure, yeah,
right?
there you
So
go.
so yeah, so
Carn Evil
I'm
Nine.
So yeah, I would like to, yeah. So maybe I'm playing because I want to memorize the whole 200 pages and kind of be like him, right? I mean, maybe that's there, right?
Oh
So
no,
maybe
no.
those
By the way,
mo
copying stuff is a huge way to have fun, right?
yeah,
Because it gives you, it's the gaming part, right? Like this is the game.
yeah,
You
exactly
can
right.
play it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know why am I playing this particular music because I like the music or because I like to be a little bit like in like Keith Emerson's, in terms of his skills, right? Or maybe kind of like there is maybe 10 other things that I'm not even consciously kind of surfacing, so that I can talk about it, right? So maybe a play, right, or a game, right, is this kind of like a really deep activity, right? I like Legos. I don't know why, but I like Legos. I like the outcomes. I don't know quite why, I like the bridge or the tower that I put together from
Oh,
Legos, right? So but maybe there's a little bit of an architect, in you and I, right? Like
I was going
creativity.
to say
I
my
don't know.
beef is that
Yeah,
Legos became kits. Sorry, I think
yeah.
I left that at models, but see what I mean? They became things
Mhm.
that you made and then they sat there and I was like, that's not the point of Legos. Like the point of Legos is there's no point, right? They're just
Yeah,
shapes.
exactly.
Anyway, it bugged
Yeah,
me
yeah,
because that's
and
what
that
my
this,
son did.
yeah,
He'd make it and then he'd be done. It's like,
yeah.
okay, so you can't even sniff glue now. Come on. Like, what's the deal? You're supposed
Mhm.
to have well, actually, there's something to that. You're working with something that's toxic and a little dangerous and a little scary. You know what I mean? And that's actually a good primer because people weld and solder like I do. You sooner or later you build a tolerance for some discomfort when you're making
Mhm.
things. And I
Yeah.
think when you take that away, right? You're just like, okay, it's back to the goal is X. Your goal is to get an A. That's the only reason you're in this class is to get an A. And I'm like, no, it's the least of the interesting goals, right?
Mhm.
That's not the point at all. But what can I do? Right? What can I say?
Mm, Well, yeah, but that's maybe AI is going to be able to internalize and create a model, right, of kind of what do we need to do, right? And your model of a student being in your class is totally different from their own model, right? Their own model is that they have careers to kind of maybe build, and the A is the only thing that is kind of contributing to the career in their mental model, and in your model, hey, you probably needs to kind of like broaden your horizon and all that stuff, right? So I think that the AI is probably going to create new ways of play and new modes of play, especially when AI becomes the physical AI and it's going to be able to try get out of the screen and kind of get you first maybe the robots that will put the dishes from the sink into the dish machine, right?
Just learn to do the dishes. Come on. This is like
Yeah, and
folding
that's going to
laundry, by the
be.
way, is quite pleasurable. I don't know where people are getting off on this stuff, but
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly right. So maybe so that might be interesting, right? Because now you're gonna be able to maybe kind of kick the can with the robot, right? And the robot is gonna come up with a new method or new way of kicking the can, right? And it's
For wealthy people, this is the problem. Like we got
yeah.
computers early, and so we learned their problems. And actually, I don't mind when people skip these problems because these were. Remember when you had cassette tapes that had your programs on them? I'm like, oh, do you remember? Like that was your
Oh
storage
yeah, that's
device
my
for a
first.
while. It was the
Yeah.
biggest pain in the ass ever because it would screw up almost every time. But we had plenty of time back then, and we were pretty,
It was so
it would
cool.
do
Yeah.
something fun once every thing. But I do love, especially in computing, and maybe that's a topic for next time. I loved how people encounter a problem, figure out how to solve the problem, and then share the solution to the problem. And because they've done that so often for fun, because Will Crowther, who did Adventure, was actually in the middle of a divorce and was missing his children, and so he made Adventure as a way to
Mhm.
kind of bond with his children, which is such a strange, reason that we have AAA gaming studios now. But at one point, it was just some people getting together to try out some dumb idea. You know what I mean? That only they worked tirelessly to be able to finally do. You know what I mean? And now that they've built so much of infrastructure, you've got all this great infrastructure, right? You've got graphic insanity, right? But then I watch the people building these things. It's now much, much harder in a completely different way, which bugs me, right? Because then you're like, well, this was all just to play, right? And the point of a game, most of us, is to enjoy the gameplay. And to me, the best gameplay is fun to fail, right? If you make it fun to fail, you'll keep playing. Same thing. Hey, they're brilliant or whatever the hell AI says to me, right? Like it's fun to be complimented on an idea, whatever, right? Like it doesn't hurt anybody. And that's what I think is funny. Like if you make something that's just difficult, like you said, going into engineering, they just want to make it hard for you to weed you out. And you and I both remember this from computer science, right? Weed people out.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't think so. I think we're taking the wrong tactic, right? It's more like you might take a lot longer than this other person, but you'll probably get there. Keith Emerson might have been a keyboard prodigy, but you know what I mean? No, everybody doesn't have to be Mozart. He just started early. You know what I mean? You and I could start now, and because we have experiences, maybe that makes us more powerful. And by the way, we're really good at using AI because we have the powerful criteria already, right? I want to compose something in the manner of Keith Emerson, is what I was telling my friend. I'm like, oh, it can do that pretty easily, right? Like, here's the MIDI file. And he's a musician. He's been a musician his whole life. He's a famous musician, but he just wanted a MIDI file because he doesn't know music. He doesn't know how to, play music, which I think is great because he's always been just playing. You see what I mean? And you play with other people, which is another subject too, that you do this to communicate with others sometimes, right? Like you still have to have Chris Squire, I mean, come on, he's the linchpin. So anyway, I guess we're at our end. Does that bring things full circle, or did I just?
Yeah, I mean, you introduced an interesting concept, which is basically having fun at failing, right? That is something that is big, right? I mean, the gaming industry is built around the concept of kind of facilitating the win, right? Now, if you kind of turn this around a little bit, like, hey, we know that we fail, right? But we want to make sure that this is fun and maybe kind of beneficial and informative and all that stuff, then maybe that's the educational model that can be kind of really kind of benefiting from that concept. And yeah, and I think gaming or play or kind of a mix of the two, right? It's kind of going to be an interesting thing. Like for example, the game Magic, right? Like comes to mind, right? Or
Sure.
or the game that is kind of described by Neil Stevenson in his novel Remde, right? Remde, right?
I
Uh,
didn't finish that one, but keep going.
yeah, so basically they are just kind of like very open worlds, right? Like the Magic game is
Mhm.
kind of like interpret a lot, and then the Rimdi in Neil Stevenson world is basically kind of like a World of Warcraft kind of a thing, which with a lot of other kind of benefits. Like for example, the game kind of acts as a banking system in a way that you can deposit the funds to the game, and then you hide those coins, right, or whatever inside the game. Like the protection for your assets is kind of like you physically hiding them somewhere and protecting those
Hmm.
assets. And if somebody wants to steal those assets from you, they will have to steal them in the game, right? By defeating you and defeating your powers, right? So
Hmm.
the game in Neil Stevenson world is kind of like this very powerful platform where there is capabilities that are kind of like spanning into the real world very significantly, and then you as a kind of person or an avatar in the game, you kind of gain powers and kind of similar like in the World of Warcraft, right? If you play, and by the way, this is kind of like a genius. Even though Blizzard is failing or has failed as a company, that particular product, people still play, after 2 decades or 3 decades, and still
Yeah.
paying subscriptions, so it's such a cash cow, that it's unbelievable. But yeah, so there's still an attraction, right? People probably playing that game for decades now and use it in so many different ways that is kind of it's interesting to study like what is the how people gravitated to certain things in the game like what do they do, like because you can be Merlin, right? It's maybe a little bit of a fantasy environment, but what if this wasn't fantasy environment? Would you do things differently? Would you gravitate to doing different things differently? Or so maybe it would be a game like another Neil Stevenson, a book like book and Snow Crash, right? Where you are kind of like this, maybe you are a swordsman, and you cannot be defeated, right? Uh, so. So yeah, so I think that there could be some sort of a behavioral kind of like
Yeah.
gravitational
Oh.
attraction points that will kind of maybe emerge, unbeknownst to the designer.
No, well, and a good ending point. I was going to say, and speaking of another book called Metro 2033 or something. Anyway, I think that was the name of this book, but it's also turned into a game. It's a post-apocalypse. But the funny thing is, I was playing this game, and like you're saying, for the most part, except for mutant creatures, you shoot a lot of things, right? That's the thing, is these are all obstacles that you have to kill by doing stuff, right? And you have all that mechanics behind it. But what I didn't realize until midway through the game, and then I come back to play the game over and over again, is you can actually avoid conflict. And
Yeah.
that to me was much more fun than just shooting things, right? Because it's all just play, right? But the techniques and tactics of avoiding conflict were
Mhm.
way more interesting. And I was just happy that they realized that in the game as well, right? That that's just a different strategy. And sometimes they do, like maybe they all support different strategies, much like you were saying. So that, they're all valid,
Mhm.
I guess, right? You're just trying to get from A to B. And people see things in
Mhm.
terms of conflict often, which I don't particularly agree with, but I might engage in it because that seems the easiest way to just get rid of you.
Mhm.
But I can go around you, or maybe AI can help us. Like, how do I negotiate with you? And I think a lot of people are using generative AI to do that. How do I get along with my horrible friend who says these bad things? See what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
interesting that that could be our new superpower, is to negotiate
Yeah.
rather than destroy or avoid, which are probably the way we get through life. All right. That being said, always fun. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happy
Thanks, Mike. Yeah.
boo and whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't eat too much
Happy.
candy.
Yeah. Trick or treating. Yeah.
Trick or treat. All right. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.